The small glass owl sat apart, its wings slumped, a permanent tear of color in its eye. Helen Sterling, the artist, called it a mistake, but Brandon Vale, weary of digital perfection, saw something else entirely. He saw a story, a defiant spirit trapped in the glass, a stark contrast to his own sterile world. The Portland drizzle was a constant, patient thing, soaking into the canvas awnings of the Saturday market until they sagged with a weary weight. It beaded on the worn fabric of Helen Sterling's coat, a coat that had seen better days, much like its owner. At 57, her hands, once conductors of a symphony of roaring furnaces and molten glass, were now just chapped and stiff, fumbling with the small, sputtering hiss of a portable MAPP gas torch. Her world had shrunk to this: a wobbly card table on a patch of cracked asphalt, laden with tiny, shimmering things, glass hummingbirds, teardrop pendants, and spiraling icicles that seemed to mock the damp, gray air. They were trifles, exercises in muscle memory made from cheap borosilicate rods. A year ago this would have been unthinkable. A year ago there was the Light Forge. The name itself was a ghost on her tongue. Her studio, nestled in the woods outside the city, had been a sanctuary of creation. Its heart was a custom-built furnace that glowed like a captured sun, surrounded by shelves of rare German color rods, annealing kilns humming with patience, and a gallery of masterpieces that had earned her awards and a quiet, respected name in the world of studio glass. Then a stray spark, a faulty wire, and it was all gone. A lifetime of work turned to ash and warped, unrecognizable lumps. Now she was a curator of her own ruin. Tucked away in a dusty corner of her display, almost hidden behind a stack of velvet-lined boxes, sat a small glass bird, a northern saw-whet owl, no bigger than her palm. It was a failure. In the unpredictable heat of the torch, one wing had drooped, a millimeter too low, disrupting the powerful downstroke she had envisioned. The rich amber of its eyes had bled slightly into the clear head, a tiny, permanent tear of misplaced color. She had priced it at $20, a pittance that felt like both an insult and a fair assessment of its flawed existence. It was a constant, quiet reproach, a perfect monument to her imperfect new life. Brandon Vale's world was one of immaculate, calculated perfection. As a senior 3D environment artist for a top-tier tech firm, he spent 10 hours a day crafting flawless virtual landscapes. He built digital forests where no leaf fell incorrectly, and designed pixel-perfect cities that gleamed under an eternally ideal sun. But lately, the perfection had started to feel like a prison. He was drowning in a sea of sterile beauty, his own creativity suffocated by the demand for pristine, soulless worlds. He felt a deep, gnawing hunger for something real, something with texture, something that bore the marks of its own making. That's what had driven him out into the rain-slicked streets and into the sprawling, chaotic embrace of the weekend market. He drifted past stalls selling vintage records and hand-knitted scarves, his eyes, weary of glowing screens, scanning for a spark of authenticity. It was a faint glint of amber and cobalt that caught his attention, drawing him to a quiet corner where a woman with silver-streaked hair stood behind a table of small glass figures. His gaze swept over the delicate, perfectly formed hummingbirds and landed on the outcast, the little owl. It sat apart, slightly lopsided. Brandon leaned in, his artist's eye immediately deconstructing the piece. He saw the flaw, the slumped wing, the slight bleed of color. But he also saw something else. He saw the tension in the talons, the fierce intelligence in the one perfect eye, the ghost of a powerful, dynamic form. In his world, a flaw was an error to be patched, a bug to be fixed. Here it was a story. "How much for this one?" he asked, his voice gentle. Helen looked up, surprised that anyone had even noticed it. "That one's a second, a mistake," she said, her tone flat. $20. Brandon picked it up, feeling the cool, solid weight of it in his palm. The imperfection made it more, not less, compelling. It was a testament to the battle between artist and medium, a fight that didn't always end in perfect victory. "No," Brandon said, looking from the owl to her tired face. I can see what it was meant to be. The words hung in the damp air. Helen stared at him, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. For a year she had seen only the failure. This stranger with his soft hands and clear eyes saw the intent. She simply nodded, taking his crumpled bills and wrapping the owl carefully in a sheet of tissue paper. It was just another sale, a few more dollars toward rent. But as he walked away, his strange words echoed in her mind, a tiny, unfamiliar warmth against the persistent chill of her reality. Back in his apartment, the silence was a stark, sterile thing, a world away from the market's muted bustle. The space was a monument to modern technology, a sleek, minimalist desk, a triptych of high-resolution monitors displaying the hyper-realistic, yet utterly lifeless landscape of an alien world he was designing for a new game. Perfect plastic unreality. He placed the small, tissue-wrapped owl on his desk, unwrapping it like a precious, long-lost artifact. Under the focused beam of his LED lamp, the glass seemed to drink in the light, holding a warmth that his billion-pixel creations could never replicate. He sat there for a long time, turning the little bird over in his fingers. The slumped wing wasn't a mistake. It was a scar, a beautiful, honest scar. It was the physical record of a struggle against entropy, against the unforgiving physics of heat and gravity that governed the artist's world. In that single, elegant flaw, Brandon saw more humanity and courage than in all the flawless, algorithmically generated perfection he produced daily. An idea began to form, a spark in the sterile landscape of his mind. It was not an idea of correction, but of collaboration, a dialogue across mediums, a bridge between the tangible and the virtual. He wasn't going to fix it. He was going to complete it. A creative energy he hadn't felt in months surged through him, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with deadlines or deliverables. He moved with a newfound precision, powering up his professional-grade Ardec 3D scanner. Its low, electric hum filled the room as a grid of structured blue light washed over his desk. With the reverence of a museum conservator handling a priceless relic, he placed the glass owl on the scanner's turntable. The machine whirred to life, its lasers meticulously, lovingly, mapping every curve, every facet, every single story-filled imperfection. On his central monitor, a shimmering point cloud of data coalesced, slowly resolving into a perfect digital replica. The slumped wing, the color bleed, it was all there, translated into the language of millions of precise coordinates. This was his clay. He imported the model into his digital sculpting software, the familiar interface suddenly feeling new and full of potential. He ignored the smooth and erase tools. Instead, he selected the delicate nudge and pull brushes, tools he usually used to shape alien mountains. He wasn't a conqueror but a collaborator. He gently coaxed the virtual glass of the wing upward, imagining the heat of the fire, the decisive turn of the artist's hand. He didn't just mirror the other side. He interpreted the ghost of motion, the powerful downstroke that had been trapped in the glass. He set up a virtual lighting rig, not with the harsh sun of a game world, but with the soft, diffuse light of a gallery, allowing him to see how light would truly play across the form he was liberating. He worked on the color, not replacing the bleed in the eye, but using it as a base, layering digital transparencies until it became a point of sharp, piercing intelligence. Hours melted away. Finally, he hit render. The result that bloomed onto his screen was breathtaking. It was Helen's owl, but it was also his. It was the owl she had held in her mind's eye, reborn in a new dimension. The form was dynamic, the restored wing held in a moment of perfect, feather-light tension, ready to beat against the air. The light he'd designed flowed through it, creating a cascade of amber and gold that physical glass could never quite achieve. It was a resurrection. He stared at it, a profound sense of satisfaction washing over him. He had used the tools of illusion to reveal a deeper truth. He saved the file, giving it the only name that felt right, the unbroken Owl of Light Forge. Brandon felt a compelling need to share what he had done, not for praise, but to close a loop he felt he had opened. He chose his platform carefully. Not the loud, ephemeral chaos of mainstream social media, but a more focused, respected online community called Artisans Echo. It was a digital haven for creators of all kinds: woodworkers, ceramicists, digital painters, and traditional sculptors, a place where process and story were valued as much as the final product. He composed his post with care. He began with a high-resolution render of the unbroken owl, its digital form glowing against a simple, dark background. Then he added a side-by-side comparison, a raw photo of the physical owl with its drooping wing next to the restored digital version. But the core of the post was the story. He wrote, "This is a story about two kinds of art. I found the piece on the left at a weekend market, made by a master glass artist named Helen Sterling. She told me she lost her entire studio, the Light Forge, in a fire. She called this piece a failure. I saw it differently. I saw the soul of the piece trapped inside. Using my own tools, 3D scanning and digital sculpting, I tried to honor her original vision. This isn't a fix, it's a tribute, a dialogue between a physical craft forged in fire and a digital one born of light. It's my way of saying that the creative spirit can't be broken, even when its wings are clipped." He hit post and leaned back, a strange sense of vulnerability washing over him. He had put more of his own heart into this than into any multi-million-dollar project. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The first comments were from fellow digital artists, marveling at the technical execution and the respectful approach. Then came the traditional artists who saw the deeper meaning. A woodcarver from Vermont wrote, "This is beautiful. You used your modern tools to show reverence for an ancient craft." "Thank you," a ceramicist from New Mexico added. "Every artist has a graveyard of failures that look just like this. You saw the ghost in the machine." The post exploded. Someone shared it to Reddit, where it hit the front page of R Made Me Smile, then R Art, and finally R Uplifting News. The story resonated with a power Brandon had never anticipated. People weren't just impressed by the technology, they were deeply moved by the narrative. The image of the fallen master, still creating amidst the ruins, and the respectful stranger who saw her true worth, was a potent combination. The comment sections filled with people asking, "Where can we find Helen Sterling? Does she have a website? I want to buy one of her pieces, even a failure." The story of the unbroken owl had taken flight, soaring far beyond the quiet confines of Artisans Echo, carrying Helen's name with it. The digital wildfire showed no signs of stopping. Brandon watched, stunned, as his inbox and the comment threads filled with genuine, passionate offers of support. People weren't just offering sympathy, they wanted to act. A gallery owner from Chicago offered Helen a solo show, sight unseen. A glass supplier in Seattle offered to replace her raw materials at cost. The sentiment was unanimous. This artist, this light forge, had to be resurrected. Feeling the weight of this momentum, Brandon knew a simple tribute was no longer enough. He had to channel this outpouring of goodwill into something tangible. He updated the original post on Artisans Echo with a new plan. He announced a limited edition sale of digital prints of the unbroken owl of Light Forge, essentially ultra-high-resolution files of his render, each one digitally signed and numbered. He set the price at a modest $50 and added a crucial promise. 100 of the proceeds will go directly to Helen Sterling to help her rebuild the Light Forge. The response was like a dam breaking. The limited run of 500 sold out in under 12 hours. Encouraged, he added another tier. For $100, buyers would receive the print, and their name would be inscribed on a founder's plaque in the future studio. That sold out by the next morning. Within 72 hours, the initiative had raised over $86,000. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday that was just as gray and drizzly as the first, Brandon returned to the market. He clutched a large manila envelope in one hand and his tablet in the other, his heart thumping with a nervous, joyful rhythm. He found Helen at her usual spot, but today there was a new tension in her posture. She was packing her few belongings into a cardboard box. An eviction notice for the small storage unit where she kept her equipment and supplies had become final. This was it. The last ember was about to be extinguished. "Helen," Brandon said softly. She looked up, her face a mask of weary resignation. She recognized him. "The owl guy," she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Come to buy another mistake." "No," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I came to show you something." He handed her the tablet. On the screen was the image of the unbroken owl, glowing. Helen's eyes widened. What is this?" "I told you I saw what it was meant to be," Brandon began, his words tumbling out. He explained everything. The scan, the digital restoration, the post on Artisan's Echo, the story that had captivated thousands. At first, Helen's expression was one of deep confusion, a flicker of something that looked like anger. "A violation. You did what to my work?" "Just look," he urged, swiping the screen. He showed her the Reddit threads, the hundreds of comments. Her eyes scanned the words from strangers across the country, across the world. "Her spirit is incredible. This is the most beautiful story of art I've ever seen. How can we help her rebuild?" She saw her name, Helen Sterling, spoken with reverence. She saw the name of her lost studio, the Light Forge, resurrected from the ashes and passed from screen to screen like a sacred text. Then, Brandon opened the last file. It was a screenshot of a bank account he had opened in her name. At the top, in bold, black numbers, was the current balance, $86,452.17. Helen stared at the number. The sound of the market, the rain, the entire world seemed to fade away. She looked from the impossible number on the screen to Brandon's earnest face and back again. The rigid control she had maintained for over a year, the dam of pride and grief she had built around her heart, finally broke. A single tear traced a path through the grime on her cheek, then another. The strong, unyielding artist who had faced down fire and poverty, who had refused to bend, finally crumpled. She sank onto her stool, her shoulders shaking with silent, racking sobs, not of despair, but of a profound, earth-shattering, and utterly unbelievable hope. 8 months later, the Oregon sun, a welcome stranger after the long, wet winter, streamed through the large, clean windows of a brand-new building. It wasn't a restoration of the old studio. It was an evolution. The new Light Forge, built on a plot of land just down the road from the original's ashes, was a testament to both resilience and innovation. The design was modern, with a high, vaulted ceiling and an open, airy layout. Yet it was built with the same rustic timber that echoed its woodland surroundings. Inside, the air hummed with a quiet, joyful energy. Friends, local artists, and a handful of people who had followed the story online milled about, their faces reflecting the warm glow from the studio's new heart. In the center of the room stood a magnificent, state-of-the-art furnace, its pilot light already burning with a steady blue flame. Helen stood before it, her face no longer etched with fatigue but illuminated with a radiant, almost youthful vigor. She wore a simple linen dress, but she carried herself with the old authority of a master in her element. At her side stood Brandon, looking slightly out of place in his casual tech attire but beaming with pride. With a ceremonial flourish, Helen turned a large valve. A deep whoosh filled the studio as the main gas line ignited, and the furnace roared to life, a contained sun blooming in the center of the room. The crowd applauded, a warm, genuine sound that filled every corner of the space. The firelight danced in Helen's eyes, and in them you could see not just the reflection of the flames, but the rekindling of her own spirit. Later, as people explored the new workshop, many were drawn to a special alcove near the entrance. It was a small shrine to the studio's genesis. On a pedestal to the left, nestled on a bed of black velvet, sat the original glass owl, its slumped wing and imperfect eye bathed in a soft spotlight. It looked small, humble, yet defiant. On a matching pedestal to the right, a holographic projector silently spun a luminous, three-dimensional image of the unbroken owl of Light Forge, its wings spread in eternal, powerful flight. One object represented the stubborn, beautiful reality of a struggle. The other, the boundless possibility of a stranger's kindness. Together, they told the whole story. Helen, watching a young girl gaze in wonder at the display, stepped forward and announced to the room, her voice clear and strong, "My first new series from this furnace will be called Echoes. For all of you who answered the call, and for everyone who believes that a single spark of light, no matter how small, can burn away the dark." Sometime later, a small, carefully packed box arrived at Brandon's office. There was no return address, but he knew instantly who it was from. He opened it at his desk, the sterile glow of his monitors a familiar backdrop. Inside, cushioned in foam, was a new piece of glass art. It wasn't an owl or any other creature. It was an abstract shape, smooth and organic, like a single, large drop of perfectly clear water, captured and solidified at the moment of impact. It was warm to the touch, impossibly smooth. But the true artistry was suspended within. Floating in the absolute center of the crystal-clear drop was a tiny, perfect cube, composed of hundreds of minuscule, precisely arranged air bubbles. It was a pixel, a voxel, rendered not in light on a screen but in breath and silence within the glass. It was a conversation in physical form. Her world and his fused into one. Tucked beneath it was a simple, cream-colored card with elegant handwriting in black ink. It read, "To Brandon, who saw the whole picture in a broken piece. Age." Brandon held the glass sculpture in his hand, its weight feeling both substantial and ethereal. He ran his thumb over its flawless surface, then held it up to the light. The tiny bubble cube seemed to shimmer with its own inner life. A profound sense of fulfillment washed over him, a feeling deeper and more real than any virtual world he had ever built or any corporate accolade he had ever received. He had reached out, seeking something authentic, and in doing so had helped rebuild a world. And in return, he had been given a piece of it to hold in his own hand. He placed the sculpture on his desk, right next to his keyboard, a permanent, tangible reminder of the day he bought a broken bird and discovered an unbroken spirit.